Swivl Sessions, interviews with field service entrepreneurs. Get insights and strategies from those who took the leap and risked it all to start their own home service companies. You couldn't ask for a better guest for our 40th Swivl Session podcast. And one thing that sticks out a mile in talking to all of these owners across the whole spectrum of field service is what a lonely job it can be as an owner at the wheel, steering a business in what may or may not be the right direction, or even worse, not even knowing what that direction is. And that's when they call Mark Hummel of Inspector Empire Builders. And as a business coach, Mark shepherds these owners through those rough waters when they seem to be going around in circles. And one of the most important ways he does that is by providing clarity in what their vision is. Not just a vision for the business, but a vision for themselves, and how doing things like setting clear priorities or daily huddles can be in fostering that culture within a company. And above all else, not going at it alone. Don't do it alone. Find a friend, find a mentor, find a coach that can help you through those rough patches. And you're not going to find one better than Mark Hummel of Inspector Empire Builders. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to Swivl Sessions, where we dive into the world of field service entrepreneurship. Now, before we get into today's interview, we'll introduce the host. There's John Tyson, our customer support guru.
Spit it out. The guy whose face is peeling off from being at the beach too long.
So usually what we do is we go into these lengthy jokes about each other, but
because we grew up together,
kind of avoid doing that. So today we're just gonna go. So there's Tyson, and I am Rob Heller. But getting to the good stuff. So really excited today to introduce Mark Hummel, CEO and lead business coach at Inspector Empire Builder. So with over 4,000 hours of coaching experience, Mark dedicated his career to helping inspection companies and service-based businesses grow faster and more efficiently. So from improving executive performance, personal clarity, to building stronger teams, Mark empowers leaders to shift their trajectory of their business and their lives through teaching, coaching, and training. So Mark, welcome to Swivl Sessions. It's great to have you here. How are things over there in Friendswood, Texas? And by the way,
hot.
Where is that?
So it's just between Galveston and Houston. So close to the Texas coast, super hot, humid. I think it's something like 95 today with a heat index of 105 or something. Yeah. No complaints. That's life here, but that's how it's going.
With the bonus of humidity too. That's awesome.
Yes.
Sounds like the South.
Yeah. We know humidity and we know heat. We're based in Atlanta, so we know it well.
There you go.
Mark, tell us, before you got into IEB, Inspector Empire Builder, what were you doing?
Yeah, so it's not what people predict, that's for sure. Usually what they predict is that I was doing something in the home service space. I was in real estate, or I grew a home inspection company, Empire myself, or something like that. But that's actually not my skill set at all. My skill set is building coaching teams and coaching businesses. And so what I was doing before Inspector Empire Builder was that. Actually worked with a company called Profile, and we were putting together teams of coaches that did health and wellness coaching. And I don't know if you guys have ever called somebody who wasn't expecting your call and told them, hey, I know you don't know me, but I think you could lose weight. Would you like to sign up for this program? We got our feet wet selling coaching programs in a really tough way. And,
that's bold.
Yeah. And so that's what I was doing immediately before Inspector Empire Builder. But before all that, I got my feet under me as a leader and as a coach in a high pressure, high intensity environment, the world of emergency service. And so building teams and systems and processes to manage large scale disasters like hurricane response and terrorist attacks and different things like that. That's my upbringing. I spent most of my early days in that.
So where was that? It wasn't with FEMA. It was
started as a paramedic in Galveston, Texas, worked my way up a bunch of ladders, ended up doing a lot of leadership level response work and team building with the state of Texas. Yeah, my trajectory, the career I was shooting for, was one that was quickly heading into government. We just kept climbing the ladder, and the next step was going to be something in local, state, or federal government. And because that was the next step, I left. I decided to go do something else completely, and thought I would become some sort of consultant in the healthcare or emergency service space. And that's where I started playing around with the idea of being a coach or a consultant. And I fell in love with it immediately.
I gotta say, I'm just thinking about it now, but I think the hardest thing to do about building a business, I mean, entrepreneurs, and sometimes they're great ones when they're working by themselves or maybe with a very small team. But when you get to get a bigger team and you start hiring people, getting everyone to look in that same direction of the company goals is, in my opinion, one of the hardest things that you can possibly do. I mean, leadership is difficult, and I guess that's really what defines leadership. Am I wrong?
Well, it's not wrong at all. And I think that actually, I'll explain it like this. This might be helpful for people to hear. So we all talk about having a business vision and pointing everybody toward the target. Super wise to do that. Clearly, we should do that. But there's a step before that. For entrepreneurs who are really struggling to keep everybody pointed a direction, or even maybe struggling with their own motivation, drive, energy, all the things that we have to pour into the business, it actually starts with a life vision, a reason to excel in business in the first place. And so when we're doing coaching with people, that's oftentimes where we start to uncover the things that are unraveling in their business, is at the life level. What's going on outside of your business that's actually contributing to the function or dysfunction underneath the hood? Super important point there. Life vision is a reason to excel in business so that you can keep going.
Great point.
I see it. How does that pertain? I mean, obviously, like that's what drives the owner, right? But but you're coaching him on how to corral everyone else to kind of serve, I guess, that life vision. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, every skill that benefits the owner benefits everybody in the company. And so if the owner can craft a vision big enough for everybody in the company to see themselves within it, they can grow their life under the umbrella of the vision that you have, then you're going to have people that stick around and want to help you build it. But if somebody sees that you are either unclear about what you want, unclear about what you're building, or that maybe they can't achieve their goals within your vision, like, they're going to be out. And this is why a lot of times we lose the top tier of talent in our business because of lack of clarity, lack of drive, lack of focus on the owner's part. So this skill of building a life vision goes to every level of the business, from the owner all the way down to whoever the lowest paid person is in the business. And check this out. So if I get really good as an owner, maybe an owner operator even, if I get really good at articulating who I am, what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and then I can turn around and explain that to the people in my business, I can also help them begin to discover that for themselves. And then they have a reason to operate with excellence in the business. So this truly does permeate all through the business. It's a skill that if it lands with the owner, it will land with leaders. If it lands with leaders, it'll land everywhere in the business.
And that's super exciting. I think, I wonder how many business owners out there focus on something that kind of intrinsic in their being, instead of, working on just whipping people into shape and getting them out the door and get them on time and punishing them for this. I know that we speak to a lot of business owners, and this really hasn't come up much. We've had a few who have talked about having business coaches, but these are the kind of skills that I think it's required to grow a business from a few to many.
Mm-hmm.
How many small business owners, and I know you focus mostly now at least on inspectors, but say field service owners, how many do you think talk to business coaches?
Business coaching in general, or within our world in general?
Well, both.
Maybe both.
I'm just trying to get an idea about how many people, how many people do I know speak to therapists if they've got emotional, we all have emotional issues, but how many of them try to get that help and are big enough to know that they need to reach out to get help?
Well, I can tell you this, it's a small number compared to the amount of people who are in small business. And there's a reason that most small businesses don't make it 3 years, and even 5 years is very difficult. Rare that anybody ever hits $1 million or goes beyond 5 years. And so these statistics are all over the place. You can find whatever number you want, truth be told. But what I can tell you is that awareness is the foundation from which all things grow, right? And most business leaders are not aware of what their gaps are. That's a problem. They're also not aware of what their strengths are, meaning they don't know what to leverage in the business. They're just grind, just go do everything. They have an activity orientation rather than a let's do what's most important orientation. And we get ourselves into this burnout cycle. And so the type of people that end up coming to us for coaching are usually people who are coming either out of inspiration or out of pain. And so that's probably all of us at some point in our day, right? We're either inspired or in pain, and that's driving our actions. And so we love to try to explore that with people. And I'd say on average, most of the time it's pain. People are experiencing the same ceiling over and over and over again. Maybe it's growth in their business, maybe it's leadership, maybe it's turnover with their teams, whatever it is. But the answer to whatever that ceiling is always their personal development, because your business is never going to scale beyond your growth as a person. Period. Never going to happen. If it does, in those rare instances, it's because you've gotten completely out of the way and your leaders are growing. So you're just no longer the lid. But most people don't get to that point.
Nice work, Mark. You just answered the question I was about to ask, which was, but what's the hurdle that you're seeing a lot of these small businesses continually have trouble getting over?
Yeah. Well, there's such a range of answers to that. I mean,
Yeah.
most commonly, I would say it's just lack of clarity. And now this is going to sound a little weird. I don't think absolute clarity is a goal to chase. A lot of coaches, myself included in my early days, would say things like, you've got to be absolutely clear about your vision and what you're building so that you can go only to that, right? Everything else gets cut off. But after coaching thousands and thousands of people and thousands of hours, what I have found out is that clarity is best looked at by just being clear enough to take a step. Could you just get clear enough to take a step over and over again? If you can do that, then the next skill will be to connect those steps to your longer term target. But there's a huge gap for people in leading their businesses between knowing what they want in their life, in their business, that big giant target, that vision they want, the time freedom, the money, whatever it is they're looking for, and the steps that they need to take to get there. And so they get really clear on like that long-term vision and then really foggy on what I need to do right now. The opposite can be true too. There are people out there who are really clear about what to do now. They have no idea why they're doing it. They don't have a long-term vision. It's hard for them to conceptualize what this looks like in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. And so whichever way you are oriented, whether you have a longer term focus or you're better at having a shorter term focus, we would say one of those is your strength. So lean into it, but both of them have to happen. And so with clarity, the number one issue in business is they're not clear enough to take a step. And so they just don't. Or they start stepping in just random directions, the shiny object syndrome, and you're solving a lot of problems that weren't actually problems, stuff like that.
I liken that to when my plumbing business was growing. I would tell people that we need to stop putting out fires by not lighting fires. So in a way, it's almost like when you're talking about clarity, and it's almost like there's just reaction, and that's oftentimes what you're doing. You're always trying to catch up, and you're always trying to fix this, and it's just passive. Things are coming at you instead of maybe what you're saying. Take a step forward, like have your direction at least, and then take one step forward towards that goal actively instead of passively.
Yeah, that's great. And excuse me, I think there's so much you could unpack there, but there's currently around 300 coaching clients in our brand, and the first thing they do when they come in and they hear something like that is they go, okay, cool, clear enough to take action. And then they hear all these new ideas, all these new strategies, all these different things. And people listening to this might be like that too. They're listening to podcasts, reading books, listening to this, and they're getting this just giant list of things they need to go do in their business. Truly, they need to go do those things. But what we tell people is your number one job as the leader of your business is to always know what is the 1 to 3 most important things that need to be executed, period. Anything beyond that, the research shows that we're just not going to do it. So if we have more than 3 high-level goals or high-level focuses at the top of a company, we're basically going to accomplish nothing. If we have 3, we'll typically accomplish a couple. If we have 1, we'll typically nail it. And so those leaders out there listening right now, maybe that's a bit of a mindset shift. Is your job is to know what the number one priority is right now. Point everybody and everything toward that. And then know what the next one is going to be so that there's no stall from this one to the next one. Just clear enough to take action with that number one thing.
That's great advice. How do you suggest to your clients how they kind of propagate that, and how do they incorporate it into their culture?
Culture, yeah, that's a good one. So that sounded like 2 questions. One is, how do you arrive at what that is? And
I was just thinking, like when I was a kid, I would have a motivational thing on my mirror every day. I'd wake up and I'd see it, and that would be my, focus me on the goal that I'm looking at, right? So if you write your goals out and put them there, so like, what do you suggest to? This is where I was getting at. It's before culture, but I guess it blends into the culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you put your goal and you post it, this is what our goal is. Is that how you? I mean, how do you recommend that your guys kind of put that out to their employees or to themselves too, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So we call these rhythms. And it's not going to sound like rocket science. There's lots of books and things written, but it basically is your 1, 3, 5 year vision for your business. And then your annual strategic plan broken down into quarters, months, weeks, days. And so these are all your rhythms. Within that, you should have things like your weekly leadership meetings, your daily huddles with your team. I always recommend daily huddles with teams. It's such an incredible culture building tool, and it allows you to point people the same direction and uncover problems before they become problems. It's just a little side note there, daily huddles. But then the weekly goal review with your leaders, just so we're clear, everybody, these are the goals. What are the goals, everybody? These are the goals. And then your monthly meetings with your teams, like these are your activity checks to make sure that your team is doing the things they said they would do to accomplish the mission. Quarterly, those are strategy assessments so that you're getting together and talking about the strategy, understanding if it's working or not working, and then pivoting if needed. All of this just kind of ties up to your 1 year, 3 year, 5 year planning. And at the end of the day, the principle is that all goals should be tied to something bigger than the goal. And so if you're the leader in your business and you want to tie your strategic objectives to your culture, you got to be talking about it. You got to say, hey, Rob, this is why we're so focused on this activity this month. It's because, remember, we have this bigger goal. Everything you do tied to a bigger goal.
Yeah, it sounds like you know what you're talking about. And it's a little bit more involved than putting a sign up on your mirror then.
Yes.
But that makes perfect sense. I mean, it's building a business is complicated and complex, and you gotta structure it right. And that's why you're showing your weight in gold right now. And for IEB, I mean, have you guys thought about expanding beyond inspectors? And it seems like it's something that you could be moving into a lot of different areas. There's a lot of companies that could use this kind of coaching.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, that's something we're constantly thinking about. So we have, like any good coaching mastermind niche, it's probably 80, maybe 85% just great business coaching. And then the rest of it is the actual niche, right? And so we're not teaching anybody to do home inspections. We're teaching people to build businesses. And so that is directly transferable to really any industry. And so we are experimenting with that. We've launched a pest control company, mastermind group. I've got a passion. That's called Pest Empire Builder, by the way, if anybody's curious about that.
Pest I saw that.
Builder. Yep. That one's really great. Me personally, I have a passion project called the Known Disciple Project for faith-based entrepreneurs. Similar thing, business coaching for faith-based guys. And yeah, we definitely see a big world that we could create just by building impact companies over and over and over again. Why stop at inspections?
For sure. I mean, there's a need for it. And to some extent, we are kind of in the same business. Our job is to empower small businesses to become bigger businesses. I mean, ours is obviously very different from yours, but it's a similar goal for our clients, right? Super interesting. Tell me this. I always like to ask all of the entrepreneurs that we talk to about kind of their expectations of what they're getting into. They're always different. I mean, some people go into, like, before I went into business for myself, I thought as soon as I started my business, I'd be rolling in cash, or I'd be fishing on Fridays. And their expectations are oftentimes never met. I know it's aligned to goals, but you personally, with your entrepreneurial experience here, running this, building teams, I guess it's probably more of a smooth transition because that's what you're doing, but your switch into just, running a business. How did that work for you in terms of your expectations and unmet expectations?
It's an interesting question. And I think it boils down to people's behavior profile, which is the language we use, like how you're wired, right? For me personally, to honor the question, I'm a person who seeks autonomy. I want challenge. I don't care much about details. I want to go fast, which means I really love the entrepreneur experience. I'm okay with getting punched in the face, kicked in the guts, whatever it is. The pain doesn't bother me a bit. You just get up, keep going. Every once in a while, you got to step back and regroup. I love it. I just absolutely love it. Not everybody's like that. Some people are much more collaborative and they want to slow down and get buy-in with things, and they care a lot about details and process and putting things together. And so for those two ends of the spectrum, this looks really different. But for me, it was an extremely natural fit to go from what I was doing in the high pressure world of life and death to the high pressure world of life and death in business.
A lot of times people can't get over that jump off of the cliff. Like you said, they kind of paralyze themselves with fear on that. I was curious, Mark, with all the people that you've helped, is there one success story that you can speak of that you're proud of, or that has kind of changed the way that you do things?
I'm not sure that I could point to one, but I could point to a million stories. I can tell you one of the best things that we hear is that somebody got to step away from their business, go on a vacation, hang out with their family, do something not working, and then come back and there are no new fires. Like, we've put the systems in place, we've put the people in place, we've refined things, and we've trained people to be able to manage well so that you can step away and make yourself as irrelevant as you want to be, even if just for a week, as the leader of your business. And so that's the thing that fills us up the most, is when people are able to achieve that. It also is extremely powerful for me when I get to see that light bulb go off for people when they suddenly realize they're never going to achieve what they want operating like a technician. And they make that switch in their mind from technician to owner, and everything is suddenly different and they're never looking back.
They get out of the engine room and they start steering the ship.
Yeah,
instead of being down. Yeah, that's good.
We did have someone that talked about working in their business instead of on their business, right? Which I guess is more of a mind shift.
Mm-hmm. Well, it totally is. I'll give you an example. So a lot of the people we work with, we run them through what we call the 2x2 exercise. So a lot of times they're not doing any work on the business stuff, which we define as future-oriented projects. Things that are going to speed you up, make you more efficient, maybe grow the business, like installing systems, processes, and people, things like that. But a lot of times they need us to tell them, you have to not go do that job, give up a little bit of revenue so that you have that block of time to work on your business. And that will accelerate you like crazy in your journey. And you'll end up earning much more over your lifetime because of it. You'll build a business rather than a job for yourself. So it starts with 2 hours, 2 times a week. If you can carve that out, you can build some momentum. But that is a really tough shift. And so if you're a deep technician-minded person, you look through the lens of everything about my business is about being the best technician I can be, which means I'm going to learn all the technical stuff, and I'm going to make sure I'm the best one in my company so I can train everybody else. And you're just deepening your technical expertise at the detriment of your business building acumen. And so when you give yourself that time, that's step one. But then you've got to utilize that time really well and actually build yourself as a business leader, not just continually dive deeper into being a technician. And so when that switch happens in people's lives, it's magic. A good book, in case anybody wants to read about this, is a book called 10X is Easier Than 2X. I think it came out a year or so ago. It's basically the principle that when you start building a business with a 10X mentality, even if 10X isn't your goal, if you make a 10X decision, it's way more effective than making a 2X decision. For example, if I want to sell one more job, it's typically really tough to go just purposefully find one more person to make a sale to. But if you build a system that can sell 10 more, that's different. That's building something that can then operate without you. And then you're outside of it, looking at it going, okay, well, we can tweak this part, we can tweak that part. It's a whole different way of operating. I might have gotten off on a tangent in there somewhere.
No, we like.
So I'm talking about like building those systems. So your consulting, coaching, really, I'm sure it sounds like you have a system that you probably go in and you say, okay, you're about there, you're looking to do this. Here's kind of the playbook we would give for you to work on, right? And you probably have got that worked out, kind of a similar, cut and paste, if you will, for different, probably the same thing for inspectors versus pest control. It probably is the same, right? I guess my point is, I really just want to ask you more about your customer base. You talked about pest control, you talked about inspectors, but like, how do you work with them? So is it the same game plan?
Yeah, so tailored to the business industry. Yes. So it's, excuse me, it's people, culture, numbers is really the high level view. So if you're focused on anything other than that, you're probably getting pulled into the weeds of your business, right? And this is really tough for solopreneurs because they are the business. And so we've got to help them get out of that. But once you do have a team in place, then you start putting things in place to make yourself as irrelevant as possible so that you can be the leader, not the manager. And from there, it just continually deepens. But I can tell you the most simple way to think about it is if you're a solopreneur, oftentimes people are when they first come to us. If you're a solopreneur, you're wearing every single hat. And we look through the lens of service operations growth. So the SOG, the SOG model. And so you're wearing all of those hats. What we've got to do is build your business in such a way that you can hand off those very specific hats to somebody else. And so rather than just thinking of a process you want to get off your back or thinking of a job you want to stop doing, well, we're building out divisions and the systems and the processes that go into them. So if you're a solopreneur, you just kind of visualize yourself being temporarily in each of those positions. And so you're building it for somebody else. Then as you make your first hire, you get to hand that hat off. That's awesome. Most of the time, that's some trial and error in there, hiring somebody for the first time. But eventually, you'll get better and better at it. We do a lot of training around recruiting and selection and hiring. As you build your team, now these systems need to be things they can follow. And so the process there is you've handed it to them, but it's got to become theirs. So now they're using it, improving it, and you're the one looking at them essentially becoming the coach. As you start to get to the level of having leaders in your business, now we shift gears into you really developing your situational leadership skills. And now your leaders are responsible for building out their respective divisions of your company. So we still stick with that service-based business model, service operations growth at every level, but it just gets deeper with how you're looking at it, depending on what type of people you have in your organization. So if you're hiring technicians, that's one thing, hiring leaders, hiring CEOs, GMs, it just gets more complex.
Are you hearing a lot of these people, Mark, talk about the difficulty in finding people to hire, or the difficulty in giving up a lot of that responsibility when they hire?
Yeah, both of those. Yes. So I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody say, I don't want to hire anybody because I'm the best one at doing this in my market. And I was like, okay, great. If that's true, you should be building a business teaching people how to do this stuff. But that's usually not even true. And so it's really a fear-based thing, right? I don't want to hand this off because if somebody's not going to do as good or better than I am, then my business will go away or dry up or whatever. It's just usually not the case. And this is a pretty popular thing in the coaching world to say. You just want to get them to about 80% of what you could do. And then they'll fill in the rest. And so when we're crafting training and different things like that, like the systems, the training, the 30, 60, 90-day onboarding, all that kind of stuff we talk about, it's meant to do that. Like, let's get them to 80% of what you think you can do. And then we're going to trust and verify that things are happening the way we want.
And if someone thinks that they're the best, 80% is probably pretty good, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs out there, and they're saying, I can't afford to have a business coach. What would it cost someone to come on board with you and start learning? I mean, I know you're going to say you probably can't afford not to have a business coach, and that's probably true. Is it affordable? What do they say?
Personally, I think it's incredibly affordable. It's not always a right fit. And so I don't want everybody to jump into business coaching because what's most important is execution. So if you don't have the bandwidth or the energy to execute the things you're learning in coaching, just don't do it. Save your money, go buy more Starbucks drinks or whatever. And, you'll be the same person year over year. But if somebody's ready to execute and really change their life, then coaching is not a cost at all. It's an investment. And I don't mean that in a cliche way. I mean that in truly the cost of having a coach is negligible to what will happen in your life if you execute. Now, here's the reality, and I'm not shy about saying this. You don't need a coach to go change your life and execute and be awesome. Not everybody has one, and they still build great big businesses and impact a lot of people. What it does for most people, though, is it gives them a shortcut. It helps them cut out the trial and error of just spinning their wheels for years, sometimes decades at a time. Truly, sometimes people come to us, they've been doing this stuff for 20 years and they finally get a business coach. I mean, so that's what we really believe in, is if you're ready to cut out the trial and error and be surrounded by like-minded people, or even just have somebody be your guide, help you get there faster, then you're ready for coaching. Otherwise, just keep doing what you're doing. There's a chance that you could be amazing on your own, Statistically speaking, that's not the case. So with the cost of coaching, our programs range from, and they're all according to business stage. So solopreneur up to enterprise level companies, anywhere from $147 a month to $2,000 a month. And they're all monthly membership style coaching packages. That's what we do. Now you can pay a lot more for coaching. I had a guy, I always have a coach myself. And so I had a guy pitch me at $40,000 and I went,
Wow,
man, okay, $40,000 for the year. I don't think I'm your target man. Sorry. That's what I told him. He said, oh, my mistake. That's per quarter. I only work with people for a quarter at a time. And I went, yeah, okay, that's good to know you.
Wow.
So depending on where you are in life, like coaching can cost incredible amounts of money. You don't need to do that. What you can do is start with a great mastermind, low ticket mastermind community for like-minded people. That's always a good option. That's what we do actually, is we build mastermind and also one-on-one coaching. And then you can go, if you have the revenue, you have the resources, get a little more specific, get somebody who knows what you're doing specifically in your industry or your business, or somebody who's a bit more experienced. You're going to pay more for that. I could go on and on about the business coaching, or the coaching business model, but yeah.
Super interesting. And I think that's something that I know we talked to a lot of entrepreneurs, and I know that they could use your services. I know that I was one of those guys that built a business. I probably got lucky, but there's a lot of trial and error, like you're saying. And if you can get rid of all the errors and just move forward with a little guidance from people or quantities of people who have successfully done it, I think it makes a world of difference. I wish I had not gone down all those dark pathways and then had to come back to find another one.
Rob's got a good story, Mark. He hates to tell it, but it's good. It's a good one.
Yeah. Well, at some point we'll. But all right. Well, we've taken up a lot of your time. It's been a super interesting conversation. I love your business. I love the fact that you're helping people, that you can make a career out of it and love it. To me, it's that jazzes me up, because that's kind of like I said, we try to do the same thing. But before we wrap it up, we're speaking to entrepreneurs out there who are starting their business, whether it's, inspectors or pest control, plumbers, HVAC, you name it. There's a ton of field service companies and entrepreneurs, solopreneurs who are thinking about starting a business. What kind of advice would you like to give to people like that who are thinking about jumping into business for themselves?
Yeah, this is a pretty clear one. So whatever you do, don't do it alone. And so whether that is reaching out to somebody in your market who has been doing what you're doing and just taking them to lunch, asking them questions, or jumping into business coaching, you don't have to pay for it. Don't do it alone. Like, find a mentor, a friend, somebody who can just talk to you about what it is you want to do.
Perfect advice.
That's good. Yeah.
Well, we really appreciate the time that you're taking to speak with us today, and your story is a great one. And what you do is
absolutely.
It's aspiring to entrepreneurs and business owners, and I know I'll be encouraging the ones that we speak to who might be facing issues and not having the clarity that they may want, to look up you and
there's a bunch of them,
or someone like you, and or like you said, find someone to talk to, and don't do it alone. It's been great talking to you, Mark. Mark Hummel, thank you again for sharing all those valuable insights and stories. And it's great to see how much hard work you put into Inspector Empire Builders and Empire.
Yeah. Pest Empire Builder.
90% there, Pest Empire Builder.
Yeah.
Pest Empire. So you definitely have a true entrepreneurial spirit and helping out entrepreneurs. I love it. So for anyone who's looking to grow their inspection company or service-based business, be sure to check out Inspector Empire Builder and the incredible coaching work that Mark is doing. You can find their contact information right here on the screen, right there. And you can be sure you're dealing with a true expert in the field. So Mark, once again, thank you for being here with us on Swivl Sessions.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, guys. It's been an honor. Appreciate it.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for listening or watching. Swivl's field service software is everything you need to run your field service business for free. Till next time, check us out at swivl.tech. That's SWIVL.tech.